If you're curious to hear a little music from our guest Carla Lucero, who we spoke to in our most recent episode, check out E4TT's annual concert of music by women and non-binary composers, Midnight Serenades, on January 25th. Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our conversation with Dawn Norfleet, who we spoke to in January 2022. You studied underground hip-hop culture in New York City for your dissertation. What drew you to this scene for your doctoral work, and what surprised you the most in your research?
I love that question because it seems like it was a 180, but when I started, when I finished my master's, I actually returned to performing, but because when I was working on my master's, for some reason, I convinced myself that I might as well not continue studies as a flutist. So I'd actually put it down for about 3 years, and I would still just sort of improvise. But then when I changed programs, I started playing out more, just some R&B things, and eventually I went into the jazz scene, actually at about the same time that I was getting more into my work. Now, why hip hop? It was not my first language. Growing up, I grew up with bands, and specifically rhythm and blues and funk bands, Earth, Wind & Fire, and Stevie Wonder and Steely Dan, even though they're, it's sort of progressive, whatever you want to call it. But what fascinated me about hip hop was the idea of improvisation. I had no idea that improvisation took place in hip hop culture. So it was actually a course assignment that drew me in. I found a club at a middle school. It was like a hip hop and poetry club, and so there were like this group of 11 and 12-year-olds who were just freestyling, meaning they were improvising, and I was just really amazed. I'd never heard of that before. And so I asked more people around me. It turned out that a friend of a friend was heavily into hip hop culture and introduced me to other people and the scene. And then I found that improvisation was actually a very important part of that underground cultural scene that has nothing to do with what people really hear on the radio and the popular songs. So improvisation was what drew me in to studies in hip hop culture.
Have underground hip hop culture and your research about it influenced your own music?
Yes. Yes, I would say so. There is something about a big bass sound that is that just makes me feel good, and
I love it.
Yeah. So I'd say just a fullness of a spectral fullness or something. I aim to use like the entire instrument, whatever it is, get the full. Yeah. So, and I also, now this isn't necessarily hip hop related, but just sort of the way my mind works. I love groove, and I love polyrhythm, polyphony in general. I'm a huge fan of Monteverdi. And yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. So all of that chugs along as soul music to me. It's just beautiful, and I'm just like all into it. So, and I felt that when I was in grad school, groove was something you tried to get away from, and now I embrace it. Stuff with groove, stuff without groove, just wherever my imagination wants me to go. That's where I go. And I'm not as restricted by such boundaries, like
genre boundaries.
Yeah, genre boundaries, tonal boundaries, metric boundaries. Like I have a jazz piece in 21/8.
Wow!
And it's a groove, Um,
wow.
So, and my orchestra piece is largely in 5. So, no, it is all in 5/8. So.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure, and a special thank you to our guest, Dawn Norfleet, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to audio engineer extraordinaire Stephanie Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts and tune in next week for Good Measure.